So we are the Kelly Brewer Show, for better or for worse. We are here with Stephen Grays. He's joining us here in a second. Stephen Grays is, I'm wondering if he's a borderline genius. The jury's still out on this, but this is how he describes himself. All right, I see a pretty smart guy, and this is how he describes himself. A simple dude who never accepted the mediocrity of the world's norms. All right, that's just that few words. I love that you said it in the fewest words. A simple dude who has pushed to create his own understanding of the world and universe. Dude, you're on so many levels right there, just right there. But that helps us understand who you are, and it helps understand the story that you're about to tell us.
Yep.
Of what, who you were, what happened, and now where you're going.
It's a process, isn't it?
It is.
It's a slower path if you take this path where you question everything. You can just accept everything, and you can speed ahead and get to a further point faster. But you're going to reach a point where you don't know what to do because nobody's there to tell you, right? You go your whole life and you don't do anything. You kind of just sit in your own little bubble. I was going to college, started doing this, and then I started living with some buddies of mine, and really started getting into it, and then all these ideas form, and you're not structured into the norm as I said on there, and then you start to learn things about the world and the injustices and the things like that. So we really decided to start following that path. I started at that point. I was like, okay, I'm going to start preparing for the future. I started making games, started playing in the studio, and then we started learning about all the lies and things like that. So we decided to rebel.
So you were gaining knowledge this whole time, though.
Yeah. We were learning things. We were understanding things as far as we knew. We were understanding things on a higher level.
And you were.
We were. And
so the point is, I think this is important. It's not that you were wrong.
Yeah.
You weren't wrong.
Yeah.
You were seeing things true.
Yeah.
But you just didn't have all the information yet.
Yeah, and I was following what other people were suggesting I do about it. And so this was the time when the anonymous movement really started, the white hat and black hat hackers who started to bring their own justice to the world, and so we really got into that. There was finally an outlet of somebody who was doing something, and so we made this big plan, and I had got an invitation to go to Colorado, so we made up this huge plan. We're going to get into it. We're going to put these pamphlets together, get the information out there, and then we were going to don our Guy Fawkes masks that we had bought already, and we went to Colorado, and we printed all these pamphlets out, and then we walked on, I don't remember which street it was, but it was one of the main streets, and we passed out our pamphlets. Some people were scared, some people were excited because we were anonymous, and even though we were just some kids with a mask, and
but it was an adventure.
Yeah.
You were very excited.
Yeah, it was.
You were pumped to be doing something.
Yeah, and it was a little scary, is somebody going to take this the wrong way, somebody freak out,
right.
Or but it was exciting and it was fun.
But you said the girls did freak out a little bit.
They did. There were some girls who freaked out a little bit, and then I just kind of lifted up my mask and showed them I was human, and then they took pictures with us. Okay, so that's you have to. I'm not here to I wasn't there to, I'm anonymous. I'm just a dude wearing a mask. Pass on a message, and I believed that's what anonymous.
Do you remember what the
for.
basic message was?
Yeah, it was stuff like chemicals that are in food, things that are approved by FDA that shouldn't be. The truth between the truth about artificial sweeteners, sucralose, all that kind of stuff. And so we really just wanted to all these things that they were providing us. Were really bad for us, and it didn't make sense. Why are they doing this, to us? And so we really started digging into that. A lot of it was conspiracy stuff, but a lot of it is true. To this day, if I'm gonna opt for something with sugar or without sugar, I'm gonna go with sugar because artificial sweetener, in my opinion, is worse for you than sugar, and sugar's delicious. So why not go with the more healthy?
Natural.
Yeah, exactly. Like, because they are, there's a whole thing behind sucralose, and then they changed the name, and now it's whatever they call it.
So
And
you weren't wrong.
no, weren't wrong. But I listened. I listened more of how to address it than to find my own way of addressing it. And so the problem is all these other people, they started listening to the, you got to be a hacker. You got to do this. You got to go out there and
Disrupt.
push. You got to disrupt, and then so Anonymous started to evolve into this, they started rioting. They started putting people in danger. And that's never what it was about.
So they got more extreme.
Got more extreme. And I'm sure the core members and the people who started it and the people, they're still doing it to this day.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. They're probably hired by various government entities and other private entities to do this stuff.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, for sure. But they don't don the anonymous mask. And every once in a while, I feel like I see like another video pop up, but it's pretty rare because it became dangerous. It became an extremist movement, and those are always bad. And so that's kind of what I meant by like, you can see the problems and you can know they're there, and then you need to figure out what the best path based on, what you know to take it. Don't just do what somebody says to do.
All right. So you could almost translate that into you see the Black Lives Matter where people were just activated and it just became more violent.
Yeah. And then
so just the face changes, but the conscious the idea or whatever it is that causes it stays the same.
Yep. And it gets corrupted. Because the people people start doing it not because they believe in something, but because they want to be a part of something. And that's selfish, and then they just continue to be selfish.
But they were in the situation that you described where you had some information, and the information was correct, but you just weren't sure what to do with it.
Exactly. And very few people are going to question that. Very few, from what I've seen, there's people who question it, and they go their own path. But then there's also people who stick with it, and they just go down the wrong path until all the way at the end when they were part of the worst part of it.
I'm wondering if they're like trying to find the sociopaths so that they can empower them. And by if you radicalize 1,000, a certain group are going to remain, and that's the ones that maybe they fund.
Yeah. There's definitely, you have all those private groups that have money, and just like the Black Lives Matter, we'll go back into that. I don't want to go too much into that, but
that's
I
just one example of the Anonymous, the BLM, and then you can just keep going.
Yeah, and they would hire people to represent that group, and those groups would do whatever, whatever the people who hired them, they hired 100 people. You go out here, you're part of this group. This is how you.
So it's like a repeating pattern.
Yeah, and it's just it doesn't go anywhere that way, and it's like it works better because you have to. There's so many layers, and I know it's easy to get mad at the government, and it's easy to get mad at other, those controlling entities for too much control, and we don't feel like we have the freedom, that we should. But we also have to understand that people are idiots. The majority, that's the bottom line. People are going to do the wrong thing a lot of the time.
Okay, but the pool of idiots is fluid. People flow in and out of that pool.
Yeah. And
it's just like you and I have over our period. We had to go through it to understand it so that we could then come out.
Yeah. And we're never going to escape it. You're
going to go from pool to pool.
Yeah, and we'll become part of an average, right? So you have super idiots, and then you have less idiots, but they still average out to
the two. I love it that you split it into two kinds of people because that's just two kinds.
Yeah, and like I've heard theories. I don't know, it's not a taboo to talk about aliens anymore. It's becoming mainstream, so it's okay to start talking about that stuff because just look out there and just
it's happening. There's something.
Yeah, and so I've heard the theory. They say that the reason that we don't know more about all that stuff that's happening, the reason all that stuff's being kept a secret is because those entities that we're trying to understand out there, they don't want us to know. So it's not our government, but instead them, and this is conspiracy. This is alien. But the idea is they know better than us, just like cattle.
They're in control. You
got to keep them in the.
And I've heard this before. Just recently, somebody brought that up. That we're just cattle. Or no, it was a woman, and she said, "Women are just cattle." I said, "Everybody's cattle."
Yeah, everybody's cattle because we don't. We can survive. Cows can survive well on their own in the grass field, right? But when they start to go beyond the grass field onto the road or the highway, their survival drops, right?
Because they're unaware.
Yeah. So where we are now is our field. And as we start to branch out, we don't always know the best things. We don't, let's just a hypothetical, just a,
So we're inside a large corral,
yeah. So
a conscious corral.
we're in the earth, and they can, we can be, I really, really believe in aliens and all this stuff. I just really believe in all that. So it's going to sound crazy to some, and it's going to make sense to others.
There's something else for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, and there's stories like Valiant Thor, which I'm really bad at remembering like very detailed stories, but Valiant Thor was in like the 60s or 70s back when we were doing the
heard of him.
nuclear program, so maybe earlier than that.
Right.
He came to us. He was dressed, in a suit, looked human, but he claimed that he was part of a federation. So if you think Star Trek, my reality is basically Star Trek. That's just what I assume, because that Star Trek is a well thought out expansion of our current social systems and governments spread out into space. Right? They've thought about all that. So it's just a logical step.
So if the system exists here, it probably exists.
Exactly. It's never going to change, because when you find the perfect thing, so you go out and you have like the Federation, there are multiple planets governing everything, and you have certain classifications of planets, where the people are certain levels of knowledge and understanding. You can't just drop into a planet that's full of like primitive people who are still, like just learning farming and stuff. You're going to become a god, which would kind of explain the things we have in our past. Exactly, yeah. And then, but if you go to a civilization that's already aware, it could be a marvel to see a ship come down, but they're like, okay, well, they're out there, there's nothing to be scared of, which is where we're headed now. That is where we're going. We're going to
wonder
become
if
that.
it just occurs to me that if an alien does reveal himself, is that going to be the Antichrist?
So just how there's vast number of species and thoughts and consciousness and personalities on this planet, that's going to be throughout the universe. So good and evil, as I say in Ancient Aliens, good and evil permeates the universe. There's good out there and there's evil out there. And so there's wars out there.
So there's two kinds of people.
Yeah. And so
good and evil.
There's two ends to it, but you can exist on so many different variations. There are two ends to everything, but you can exist throughout it. So there's a binary aspect. So
spectrum.
Yeah. There's a binary outcome for situations if you want there to be, but you can, there's 0 to 1.
Infinite numbers between 0 and 1.
Yeah, because you have to grow or shrink,
right.
throughout it. So you have to account for all that. So there is good, there is evil, and then there's, in between. But that's not important, because it's easier and better to understand that there's good out there and there's evil out there. And if it's evil, just stay away from it. And if it's good, go towards it, because one is constructive, one is destructive.
You're actually remaining consistent, and because what you're describing there requires justice.
Yeah.
And so justice was one of your early themes.
Yeah.
And even translating into this 1 and 0.
Yep.
0 being injustice, 1 being justice.
Yep.
Yeah. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and I think justice and injustice are definitely one of the examples you can go ahead and basically put a pin on, black and white, because something is justified or it's not justified.
So morality.
Yeah. But of course, you have the human construct of making your own decisions. No, it's not a human construct. It's like, the reality of nature is you make your own decisions. So you can have an option for justice, and then you can choose a less justified
choice.
Yeah. So like if a judge is making their
choices,
their choice, they might not always go to full justice. They may go in between. But yeah, justice and injustice are definitely, and so no matter what happens, we're never going to escape the reality as it is, where there's wars and hunger and famine, and
that's
and
always going to be,
and then happiness and plentiful. That's always, no matter what we do, even when we get technology to evolve beyond, if we can feed everybody on the planet, something else is going to exist. And then you have to go out in the world, and maybe you've solved it for your world or for your home or whatever, but maybe there's other homes and worlds out there that haven't solved it. So no matter what you do, if you're going to be a part of the universe, then you might as well just accept that this is reality and learn how to work within it, because it just multiplies. It just gets bigger, but it's the same.
And this is the way you came to this was your paradigm shift.
Yeah.
So tell me about what happened that sort of spun you off in this direction.
So I'd always looked for signs from the universe, always kind of knew there were other things happening. And so, I looked for them, and I believed in the universe, and I had just really started getting into it. And I had a couple bad days, just got really frustrated. Computer broke, car broke, and I was
How
like,
old? Age?
um, this would be about 24, 25, because I went to Colorado, did all that stuff, came back home, and then tried to get back into the swing of things. And it just wasn't working. And I know this was something that needed to happen, but it just wasn't working.
So
And
this happened over a period, the trip to
oh yeah,
Colorado,
just within a few months.
few months.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it was like it was there. I was active, and that's one thing about the universe. We can get into it later, but you have to be active. If you're not active, you can believe and think as much as you want. You'll never get there. But so I kind of like my
You
car
have
broke, computer broke.
to do something.
You have to do. You have to work towards it, and then
You have to choose to do.
yeah, and you have to get out there and do it. If you just sit around and wish and hope and everything like that, it won't work. You have to be bringing it towards you. Now, I'm going to say that because, see, this is that thing I was talking about where I'm saying an aspect of the universe and I'm saying how to do it, but somebody out there is going to figure out how to do it and they're just going to do nothing. They're just going to sit around and they're still going to accomplish it because there's no one way to do it. I've always believed that. I'm saying this is definitive, but there is no definitive. You can, however it's all physics.
So do is on the scale in 0 and 1.
Yeah.
How much are you going to do? Are you going to do 0.5?
Yeah,
Are you
yeah.
going to do 0.9?
Yep, exactly.
0.01?
You can barely do anything. It's going to come slower, or you're going to believe so hard, and we have to get into the quantum aspect of that. But yeah, I mean,
So wait, stay on your thing when you're
yeah. So my car broke, computer broke, and I was just like really down. But I was like, you know what? I was so determined. I was like, you know what, universe, you're gonna deal me these. I'll show you. And that was the mistake.
you say that out loud or
Oh yeah.
yeah?
Yeah. I knew it was a mistake as soon as I said it, and then. I don't remember all of the different things. There's so much that was happening. I don't remember all the different reasons, but I just remember getting really broken down, like rock bottom to where I was like barely doing anything. I was just like, just flat. I was, it was nothing. And I was just like, and then so I realized though at that moment that the only thing I can do is just, I think that's when I started discovering like Plato and things like that. And, and Socrates
You were
and all that.
still searching.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, okay. He said that you can't really know anything. You can't evolve and become a better person until you accept that you know nothing. You know nothing about this world and the universe. Absolutely nothing.
So you went from knowing everything
to nothing.
to nothing.
Yeah. And so I figured
within the span of a few months.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, if I know nothing and I accept that I know nothing, and if I'm at rock bottom, then all I can do is create a new perspective going forward. All I can do is see the world as I could break it down myself and stop listening to what other people tell me, because I've been following this path and it all just leads to nonsense, and so it made more sense to just go slow, take the years and learn about what's happening. And when I accepted that,
Slow down.
yeah,
Wow.
and pay attention to everything. Question everything, pay attention to everything, and just accept that the people who were the scientists, the books, the things we learned in school, the adults or the grown-ups or with the government or any of that, I just realized that they're all idiots. We're all idiots. We don't know anything.
Nobody knows anything.
I'll put it to you like this. When I learned that when it comes to the weather, you think we're really good at predicting weather. We can see it on the maps. We can do all this. But we only know and we can only work with as much as we've learned, meaning that there are going to be situations in the world where weather happens, something happens with the weather ecosystem that one won't see coming. And it's going to happen, the more it changes, the less we're going to know about what's going to happen. For example, like, okay, we won't get too far into climate change, but it's an important subject. And so there was that, so one of the unexpected things that happened, at least in my mind, maybe there are those meteorologists that saw it coming, but they had a bubble of heat and hot air form above the Pacific Ocean towards off the coast of Washington and everything. And that warm air, that bubble floated onto land, scorched the entire West Coast. Remember all the forest fires? Those fires were so strong that they started creating thunderstorms, and the smoke reached all the way to New York. Okay, so if the planet going up a little bit that much can create such phenomenon, what else can it create? lightning strikes, the lightning deaths and lightning strikes have increased because the heat's increasing. Therefore, lightning becomes more prevalent. So these are little bitty things that we aren't thinking about necessarily, or we don't consider.
Well, can you really affect it? Can you really affect
You
it?
can't affect it, but you can make sure that you can survive it. And if you, like the Mayans, right? The Mayans, we didn't know why they were wiped out, but we finally, I think it's the Mayans, they learned there was like 15 years. I think there was 15 years of El Nino, El Nina, and they fell into a massive drought because their weather changed. And they weren't, of course they're not going to be able to see that coming. They don't understand that back then. They didn't really.
The gods were against it.
Yeah, yeah. And so so when their food started going and their survival decreased drastically, they started to war. And then when they started to war, they started to do blood sacrifices. And now we see them as like these inhumane, like, they did sacrificial things, but they did that because their civilization was on the brink.
They were seeking justice.
They need
needed something.
Something's got to work and save us.
Where did they come up with human sacrifice?
It's a good question. Probably
the aliens.
It,
Ancient aliens.
It probably worked for like one of their ancient ancestors, and they had stories. It worked one time or something like that, and they had stories passed down. They're like, okay, maybe we can invoke, the. But yeah, no, the aliens, that whole thing. There's so many theories and so many.
So we're not talking about aliens. We're talking about Stephen Gray's.
Yeah.
So you went from knowing everything to nothing.
Yeah, and I definitely lost my track there. But yeah, exactly. So I, started questioning everything, and then I started to realize just how awesome that our world and the universe and our life is.
Wow, so some good.
Oh yeah, I mean you have people still today, they're like, oh, I'm so bored, or this is, they've limited themselves to these basic few aspects of life of just like work, food, and water, and then just pout the rest of the time, right?
Pout.
Yeah, but the reality is we have so many mysteries. Right, we're like, we read these books. We were cavemen in 12,000 BC. We were cavemen coming out of caves. These are just things we know. And
fire.
Yeah, exactly. But the reality is that's not true, because we found, like, you look at it's not Pumapunku. It's I always forget the name.
So many examples of technological advance.
Yeah, and there's a mega city they're discovering around Turkey right now, and so it was this structure they found, and it had like these fully like sculpted statues at a point when we're not even supposed to have civilization. We're supposed to be in caves, and so then they found another structure not too far from it, and they realized that this is all one mega city. So when we're not even supposed to have basic tools, or we're supposed to they had a mega city going on, and so I started to realize that there's more to our history than we realize, and we've had civilizations beyond what we understand. And the furthest back we know are the Sumerians, and we don't know anything about them. We just lucked out a few times and we learned about them, and then they had the clay tablets that they had Sumerian writing on.
Right. So let's talk about Stephen.
This is me.
Oh, this is you.
This is me. Like when I can, I'm going out in the world. I'm gonna be doing more scholar stuff on this. I've only got like base information, but this is who I want to become. And this is what drives me and what brings me to where I am, and just that the world and everything is so bigger, and we have so many more mysteries, and there's so much to be more to being a human than just evolving from monkeys, living in caves, coming out, and then starting the Roman Empire and moving forward. That's just what we remember, and so I think having that sort of mystery and that sort of bigness to even just our world that goes beyond what you'll even probably learn in this lifetime.
So you
amazing.
Got more of the story, and what you're finding is you're never going to plumb the depths.
Yeah.
Once you realized there was more, and you started investigating, you realized it was unfathomable. Say it.
Yeah.
Can you say
unfathomable.
It? Unfathomable. I don't know.
But yeah, exactly. Like, it just adds this layer of mystery of like, who were we? Where did we come from?
All right, so wrap it up. What did you learn? If you could say it in a sentence, like you did here, if you could, in a sentence, describe, give us a golden nugget of what you learned and what you would necessarily want somebody else to understand about your journey. You're a simple dude.
I would
Does not
say
accept norms.
I would say just know that the picture is far bigger than we even understand right now, and go look for it yourself. Don't take anybody's word for it. Do the research, watch the documentaries, read about it, and start coming to your own conclusions.
Choose to do something
Yeah,
about.
yeah, and maybe you'll be the person who figures it out. I don't,
Yeah.
I mean, because we have so much to learn that it's unreal.
It's unreal.
And
I was going through a book on the cell, and the deeper they go, the more they find.
yeah,
They still have only begun to
Yep.
plumb the depths of a single tiny cell.
and then you dive into quantum. What makes a cell a
Well,
cell?
you
What
can keep going to the bottom.
Yeah.
Just like you keep going into space.
Yeah.
It's theoretically infinite.
infinite. Yeah,
Same thing with down in the small, the
Yep.
quantum as you're describing.
Yep.
If you can be Ant-Man and just keep going.
yep.
You know.
And it just repeats itself over and over. It's physics. The physics is just extrapolated.
So if we're a vibration, okay, and our body changes, it's a whole new body every 30 days or so, something like that. All of our cells and everything have renewed, right?
Yeah.
So we're really just sort of a vibration, we're a clot of consciousness or whatever in this pattern of my human body.
Yeah.
Right? And I have heard that our size, the size of the human being, is roughly in the middle of vast, huge and small.
Yeah.
And so, if we're just in the middle, vibrating, as a physical body, then really it's unfathomable.
There's an N. I think you're missing the N. It's messing you up. Fathom. Nope.
It's fathom.
Fathom.
Fathomable.
Fathom.
Fathomable.
Fathomable.
Unfathomable.
See, there's an N in there. There is an N. It's like you gotta.
Unfathomable. All right. So yeah, we need a dialect coach, I guess.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and
so you're just a vibration, and your cells renew every month, and what does that mean? What for the frick?
so we've talked about it before. We're split into three parts: body, mind, and soul. Right. So the body is a collection of single cell organisms.
Right.
There's just a whole colony of things doing their job, allowing this physical to survive in this world.
Consciousness to exist in this physical body.
Consciousness. So you've seen Avatar, right? So it's like that. I believe that a consciousness, the soul, is just piloting this, right? So we can tell the body through the mind what to do. The mind has an automation, and the body has automation.
So
and I think that's the coolest part is that we're just like a bunch of tiny
we don't even
organisms.
know what we are.
Yeah.
Really.
Just somehow they came together and they're like, this is what we need to do, and this is how we're going to do this and this, and then eventually they created more complex organisms, and then of course with the incredible DNA and the way our universe works, life is possible. But I think the coolest thing, my favorite thing about that is, you ever heard of LUCA? LUCA stands for Least Unknown Common Ancestor, right? So LUCA is a theoretical single cell organism that we share ancestry with plants. So there was LUCA, and then LUCA split. One cell was like, oh, I'm hungry, I want to eat some shit around me. And then you had another one that was like, yeah, I'm just going to kind of chill, and the sun's going to let me. So one became stationary and one became active. And then you evolve over time, the cells get more complex, and you have plants, and you have flora and fauna. So we do share an ancestor with plants called LUCA. And I mean, when you think about that, it's crazy because it ties us together, saying that we are exactly the same. We just survive differently. That's the only difference. One of us can sit around and enjoy the wind.
Easy. Okay, Luca, I got it. So what came before Luca? I would just say God. So I'm not saying you're wrong.
Yeah.
I'm saying, to me, the rest of the story is, surely there was the first original cell.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Life.
God would have created, because God is a sort. You have to have an organizing force.
Consciousness.
Yes.
So consciousness would have existed before physical reality.
Yeah.
So consciousness can extend throughout realities.
Correct. And does.
And does, yeah, exactly. So consciousness, and if you go based on a lot of the, the ancient teachings and their understanding is we could essentially be a fraction of God's consciousness. So you can have one consciousness that exists through all realities, and then we're just tendrils.
A node or something.
We're tendrils that come out of it, and so what is
like a plant.
Yeah, yeah, and so we are just different aspects of God's
correct
consciousness.
Yeah,
and so
consciousness is organization. To me, that's a big key factor.
And so you can't have progress without chaos. That's the reason it's just
you have to have friction to have fire.
You have to have some sort of, and so if you break everything down, you accept there was one consciousness, and then reality became, and then so if you just take the assumption that the consciousness wanted the reality to exist, then you would have to then assume that the reason consciousness wanted reality to exist would be to experience reality in itself, which is why they say that we are, the universe discovering itself. The universe is waking up to its own self. But, so that's why I like the idea of like celestial beings, if we're different celestial beings or for, whatever. We exist here because we just want to experience reality. It's a story. Okay.
So you're describing really your experience. Your experience, if you summed it in a couple of words, is choose to do.
Yeah.
That was your your story, right?
Yeah.
And you're describing consciousness, which is something choosing to do.
Yeah. So one day God was lonely. If you want to think of the ultimate consciousness as God, because it's all different words, but the same thing.
Right.
It was bored, for lack of a better word. Maybe
right.
it wanted
lonely.
to.
Lonely. I like the word lonely.
Yeah, yeah. It was lonely, and it had an idea. What if there was something to look at?
What if I had a friend?
Yeah, yeah. And then, for all we know, it could have been accidental. What if consciousness just wanted to become something? And because of its own nature, the universe
doubled itself or whatever.
And so then you're like, okay, what are the different universes, et cetera? But they're starting to discover in like black holes. The theory is that inside of a black hole, when you go through it and you come out the other end, it's just another universe. So all the black holes in our universe go into universes, and so that's the most leading theory. And then so they'd all be bubbles of different sizes because expansion. And so,
well, you have to in the cell. I was talking about the cell earlier. You have nanotubes, they call it, that lead from one part of the cell to another part of the cell.
That's cool.
So you would naturally, if it's in a cell,
yeah.
then it's going to be in the greater whole.
Yeah, yeah, because it's like clouds. Okay, clouds and water, they use the same physics. Fluid dynamics. The way the ocean behaves, the same way that clouds behave. That's why you see when they roll in or when the
repeating pattern.
Yeah, yeah.
You can lay on the beach and look up in the sky, and the clouds look just like the ripples on the beach.
Yep, exactly.
Same pattern.
Same thing, and it's just physics. Everything is physics.
It's all connected.
Yeah.
And it's unified.
Yeah.
I would say unified. Other than whatever the dark the chaos forces.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be done away with at some point.
Yeah.
I believe that we're going to reach a time of peace and harmony and in the
and we might, but other civilizations might not. So let me say what I mean. So you've heard the Akashic records, right?
Yeah.
So the Akashic records are essentially the cloud for the universe. So let's take a hypothetical civilization. It's a billion years older than we are. So that's a billion years of more evolution than we had. That's a lot. Let's say they figured out how to broadcast their data throughout the universe, just like how we can broadcast data across the planet. They just figured out how to do it because we're already going to be there. When we understand entanglement and quantum mechanics better, we'll do teleportation and we'll be able to send data across the universe at any distance, right?
Probably are already doing it, just not even aware that we're doing it.
Yeah. And so that's why that's what the theory of the Akashic records are. Is a civilization that figured that out.
Figured out what exactly?
So they gained all the knowledge of the universe, the mathematics, the understanding of quantum physics, the different principles that make the universe the universe.
Is this an Indian text? I'm trying to remember.
This comes from Hindu. Yeah, the Hindu. And so this civilization is so advanced, they figured out how to, we could only be 10 years, because when you can broadcast data from point A to point B on a table, you can broadcast it point A to across the universe. There's no difference in the math because it's quantum. And we're already getting basic data through quantum. We can already do it. So let's fast forward, just a little, not even that far. We're going to figure out how to do it. So if we can figure out how to do it, they've already. And but quantum is outside of space time. It doesn't exist in space time.
4D,
Yeah,
5D.
it goes deeper and higher, and it's the building block of the higher dimensions. And so we can observe it, and but that's why it's weird to us and we don't understand it, because it's not a physical reality mechanic. It's a beyond reality mechanic. It's a hyper reality or
We need
whatever.
more information.
Yeah. Yeah.
So repeat, if you can remember what it was you said. Repeat for me what you feel like was your became your unifying theory. I like that about you, that you're always looking for the unifying theory. And I definitely am too. I think it's God, but I don't understand God. So I can't explain it. But you kind of have a version.
Yeah. The unifying theory could just boil down to the fact that we are just one single point of consciousness throughout an entire multiverse. And we could literally be tied together because we are the same thing. And you can't go beyond that. But I don't know, unifying theory for
Any that unifies anything. Just reality. How can we explain our reality in a single sentence? Now, the Bible says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth," and in that sentence, all of existence is in that sentence. I don't know if I've ever described that, but in the beginning is time. God created, that's energy. The heavens, that's space, and then the earth is matter.
Yeah.
So time, space, energy, matter.
Yep.
In that single sentence. So, poof, that's going to be hard to top.
That goes right back to, if we're tendrils of single consciousness that exists, God, if we're just aspects of Him, the moment that He decided He wanted reality became.
Exactly.
And our theory is the Big Bang theory, but where did that singularity come from?
Well, it could have been when He said, "Let there be light."
Yeah. And there's quarks or something. I remember, I don't know much about this, but I remember there was something where they were saying there is a building block to the universe that could become something out of nothing. I think there was. It was like quarks did something really weird, and they can just.
Obviously, He created something out of nothing.
Yeah.
But I just say that it can't. Nothing cannot create everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
To
It
me.
had to be something.
Something.
Yeah. And that's what, we've been searching for a long time. Of course, religion was.
It's a way to
Used-
describe the
Yeah.
patterns that are seen.
Yeah. And because of the corruption, the corrupted people who used it, they have put a dirty aspect. Just like we've got into it one time where I mentioned paganism, and to you, paganism is the devil, but it's not. That is Christian propaganda that started back in Roman times, when there was Celts, and I guess the Roman army, I can't remember exactly, but the Roman army attacked one of the Celts when they weren't there was no fighting or nothing, but he killed one of their people, and they were they went to the walls, they went to Rome, and they're like, we want him for justice. He killed one of ours. We just want that one guy. They wouldn't give him up. And so the Celts started the war because of that. And then the Romans won, and they spread their version of it. And they demonized the Celts to make them devil worshippers. They never were. And then the Celtic religion was the same as any religions, where they observed the world and they saw all the different aspects of it, and they loved it so much that they personified it. And the personification was their way to communicate and interact with different elements of the earth. And they had no structures. Just make sure you worship, and make sure that whatever you want it to be, whatever your aspects of life. And in Hinduism, the same way. There's so many gods for all the different things, and it's a matter of connecting to the universe in your own preferred aspects of it. And then you had the people who came with the single religion, the single God. And there was many of them. And actually, I just saw a thing that was really cool. They're starting to dig into the Sumerians, and there was a much larger civilizations so there's the Sumerians, and the Bible have the flood story. So they just went ahead and assumed that they were one and the same. They described, it's called the something of Gilgamesh, the Epic of Gilgamesh is the same story. So what they did is they've been learning more and doing research, and they discovered that Sumerians were actually part of a much larger civilization, the Ur. And there was a massive flood.
That's in the Bible.
Is it? Ur? There was a massive flood, and destroyed that civilization, but the Sumerians survived and they spread the word. So they think that's where Abraham was a part of the Ur. So
Yeah, he came out of Ur.
yeah, so he was, so he was a part of that massive civilization, and then they broke off. So, he was the one who created the one God. So even if you think of the Egyptians, you had Akhenaten. Akhenaten came and he says, "You worship the sun disk," and he changed everything. And when he died, they changed everything back. They scratched him for the record because he was a heretic. But he wasn't the first one to come up with the one God theory. That was Abraham.
You are connected to the universe, at least as far as your understanding, because your experience as a young man was you chose to do. And you describe consciousness or God as the active element that chooses to do something, create all
Yeah.
of creation,
Yeah.
right? And so that means you are at one with one with consciousness.
The universal consciousness.
Yeah. Or that you could also say that the consciousness exists in you, right? Or you could even say that just like we were talking about the quarks or whatever that touch each other, the consciousness has touched you and is telling has moved you into the describing it, if that's a way to speak about it, or to the point is really to help other people either tune in, right, or understand at least that it exists,
Yeah.
and to get out of this horizontal sort of prison.
Yeah.
If you can go vertical, right, and it's I don't know, it's a simple way to describe it, but if you
Yeah.
can get north south and get reoriented from east west, then you can rise.
Yeah.
But east west is just it's sort of a repeating, feels like a circle to me.
Yeah.
But north south feels like infinite up, infinite down, which is the universe and the cell, this quantum physics world, whatever. So that's actually that's actually a great realigning, that I think that men have to do.
Yeah.
Men have to get off of this, and we have to achieve this.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm summarizing
Yeah.
what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah.
And maybe adding a little bit of my own stuff. So
Yeah.
anyway, we're running out of room. Thank you for showing up. Love you, Stephen. I appreciate you. And I've got a parting gift for you. I know I've already. I appreciate sounding in the camera.
I do like light.